So I'm going to do a topic here today that is just going to be a very unusual topic. I can pretty much guarantee that you've never heard this topic presented. Certainly, maybe you've heard it in a church somewhere, but I doubt it. And I can pretty much guarantee you've never heard it from someone who actually has firsthand experience in working with nuclear weapons. So this is not a topic for the tender of heart, but I really feel like it would be good. I feel like the Lord would want me to do this at some point. And I don't mean to have this like really heavy day. I don't think you all think of this as a heavy meeting, weekly meeting, but I guess today is, right? It's kind of a heavy topic, and there's no way to make this not be a heavy topic. So I will not be offended if you leave, okay? And what you'll notice, I gave you the outline right at the top, nuclear weapons. Is this a relevant topic for our day? And the second, I'll just very quickly talk about my experience. And then I hope to spend most of the time talking about nuclear weapons. Are they actually in the Bible? Can we actually see it? Okay, and so I want to encourage you. Some of you might have questions or whatever. Well, let me just write your questions down if they are in either the first or second point. In other words, even if they're clarification in the most minuscule way, no. Okay, write those questions down because I want to save time for the Bible part, and I have so much to say. Okay? So the point number one. Just write them down, and we can take. I'm happy to take them later. Happy to. Is this a relevant topic for the day? And what I did here was I just pulled together articles, and I'm not going to go through all of the articles with you. I'm just going to touch on a point here and touch on a point there. And by the time we get to the end of point number one, you'll see why I did this. So, but I gave you the whole article because some of you will have questions, and that way you have the source, right? And you can actually go to it. So, just thoughts. Like, for example, should Israel nuke Gaza? And let me tell you, my answer is absolutely not. Okay, absolutely not. And the article, which was in The Hill, it was in multiple sources, and it said the title, Netanyahu suspends minister who suggested dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suspended far-right heritage minister Amichai Eliyahu on Sunday after he suggested dropping an atomic bomb on Gaza was a possible way to deal with the threat from Hamas. This is November 5th. Netanyahu sharply rebuked the comment, saying they were not based in reality, and stressing Israel's commitment to abide by international law and avoid unnecessary deaths. So, and I am of the opinion if Israel nuked Gaza, that would in no way risk World War III. Not at all. It would risk the annihilation of Israel. The entire world would attack Israel. The risk to Israel's survival is not from over-responding. The risk to Israel's survival is from under-responding. The Neville Chamberlain model, waving the paper and saying, peace in our time, and that's what led to the rise of Hitler. Page 2. The blue line at the bottom is something I'm cutting off. That's the end of the article. You have the whole article. U.S. nuclear subs in the Middle East, Monday, November 13th. Israeli troops surround Gaza City. U.S. confirms nuclear submarines in the area. Several Ohio-class submarines carry cruise missiles and the capability to deploy with special operations forces. So it's unclear if the submarine operating now in the Mideast carries nuclear ballistic missiles. The U.S. has deployed submarines into the region before and announced its recent presence as tensions were high with Iran. Near the bottom, highlighted, the U.S. military has acknowledged positioning a nuclear-capable submarine in the Middle East. It provided no other details in its online statement Sunday, though it posted an image that appeared to show a submarine in Egypt's Suez Canal near its Suez Canal Bridge. U.S. acknowledgement of an Ohio-class submarine location is incredibly rare, as they represent part of America's so-called nuclear triad of atomic weapons. So it's a nuclear triad. A nuclear triad is There are only a handful of countries that have the ability to deliver nuclear weapons, land-based, air-based, sea-based. ICBM, submarines or other forms of ships, and planes, the three ways of delivering nukes. We have it. As you'll see, there's only a few countries that have that ability. So the next paragraph is the same paragraph from the top, several Ohio-class submarines. The bottom paragraph, Central Command separately released an image of a nuclear-capable B-1 bomber also operating in the Mideast on Sunday. Page 3, Pentagon announces new nuclear bomb 24 times more powerful than the one dropped on Japan. The new bomb would replace some current stocks and not increase the U.S. nuclear stockpile. So we're going to add these and get rid of others. So the number stays the same is the point. The Department of Defense announced its pursuit of a nuclear bomb that will be 24 times more powerful than one of the bombs dropped on Japan in World War II. In the next paragraph below the picture, you'll see highlighted 24 times larger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima during World War II, which was about 15 kilotons. The B-6113 would also be about 14 times larger than the bomb dropped on Nagasaki, which was, this says 25 kilotons. That's actually an error. They're wrong. Nagasaki was 10 kilotons. Nagasaki was 10 kilotons. Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. Let me give you a little context of that. You might remember a few years ago, the U.S., we dropped the mother of all bombs on tunnels of ISIS. It was called MOB, or the mother of all bombs. That bomb was an 11 kiloton conventional bomb, not nuclear, conventional. Nagasaki was a 10 kiloton nuclear device. The mother of all bombs was larger than that. It was 11 kilotons, but it was not nuclear. Hiroshima was 15 kilotons larger. So the mother of all bombs is between the two nuclear bombs, but it is not nuclear. We dropped it on the tunnels of ISIS. It would seem rather hypocritical if the U.S. were to tell Israel that doing a similar action on the tunnels of Hamas was immoral. That would be a double standard. Next page, page 4. An article from the New York Times, November 2nd. Russia pulled out of a nuclear test ban treaty. Test ban. What is the nuclear testing treaty? The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, or CTBT, was an attempt under the umbrella of the United Nations to ban all nuclear tests. Page 5, what does Russia's decision mean? Second line, though the move was mostly symbolic, because it's just tests, okay? The last line in that section, it is unclear, however, whether Russia will resume tests of nuclear submarines. They literally just pulled out of the treaty, but they have not violated the standards of the treaty. Does that make sense? What nuclear treaties are still in effect? The New START is the only nuclear weapons deal between the United States and Russia, although Mr. Putin announced last February that Russia was suspending its participation. Russia has thus far stuck to its treaty limitations. End of the article, going to page 6. Tsar Bomba. The Tsar Bomba, the king of bombs, was a Soviet thermonuclear bomb that detonated in a test over the Arctic Ocean on October 30th in 1961. It is the largest nuclear weapon ever set off. Built in 1961. Next, halfway down that paragraph, thus it was modified to yield 50 megatons, approximately 3,800 times the strength of the U.S. bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It's massive. Below that, there's a little thing here is a YouTube video describing the Russian Tsar bomb. You can look at that later. It's an interesting video about what that was really like. Okay, it's by far the largest nuclear device ever exploded. Okay, next page, page 7. Countries holding World nuclear arsenal. Okay, as of January 2023, Russia, you'll notice, has more nuclear devices than the U.S. does, and has almost since the very beginning, of the Cold War, they quickly took over that lead. They've always had more nukes than we do. Then comes China, France, United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. Some articles about some of those countries. U.S. largest nuclear weapon. The B-53 nuclear bomb had a yield of 9 megatons, most powerful weapon in our arsenal. It was retired in 1976. With its retirement, at the bottom of that article, the largest bomb currently in service is in the U.S. nuclear arsenal is the B-83 with a maximum yield of 1.2 megatons. 1.2 megatons then is the largest bomb that we have in the U.S. arsenal. I worked with 1.2 megaton bombs. Okay, not that same one, but that's the missiles that I worked with. Page 8, Russia's largest nuclear weapon. The world's most powerful nuclear weapon today is a Russian ICBM named Satan. In the late 1960s, the Soviet Union jumped ahead of the United States for the first strike capability in a big way. The latest version of the R-36 ICBM, called the SS-18, you might want to remember that for a little while, by NATO, could hit anywhere in the U.S. with at least 10 18 to 25 megaton nuclear warheads. Let me explain what that means. 10 different warheads on one missile. Each missile has 10 reentry vehicles, and those reentry vehicles will each be between 18 to 25 megatons. So the missile takes off, it gets somewhere in where it's designed to, and the head splits, and each missile then gets targeted to its spot. Russia is not the only country that has these multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles, MIRVs. Not the only country. We have them. Great Britain has them. France has them. And China has them. China and nuclear weapons. By the way, we have between 450 and 500 of these. Between 450 and 550 of them. So we have a lot of them. But we don't have anything as large as the ones that they have. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. China now has more ICBM launchers than the U.S. does. Intercontinental ballistic missiles. So it's like the holes in the ground with their missiles in it and they take off. China has more of them than we do. China, in the next article on nuclear weapons, October 19, 2023, has a stockpile of 500 operational nuclear weapons. The bottom article on Israel, although Israel has possessed nuclear weapons since the 1960s, it maintains a policy of nuclear opacity, never officially confirming the existence of its nuclear program. I can tell you they're kind of well known in the nuclear world for having what's called the Samson object or option. You know how Samson died? Right? You can imagine, therefore, what the Samson option is. If we're about to die, you're dead. That's the Samson option. Okay. The next page is, I think, of great interest, the development of Iran's uranium stockpile. Iran, you can see, by the way, when Trump became president, completely lost all of its nuclear capability, 100% of it. Obama, you can see it growing. Biden, you can see it growing. President Obama is a great charismatic person, but he has pretty much on defense issues, I don't know if he's ever been right. Ever, okay? I'm talking defense. I'm just talking defense. Remember him mocking Mitt Romney when Romney said Russia was the biggest threat we faced? Well, I don't know if you noticed, but Russia is no longer anything. And the media ran with it. And he gave him $150 billion to Iran. What have they used it for? And President Biden's given $6 billion. Let me say in defense, though, of the Democratic Party, I am so thankful for the Jewish politicians that are in the Democratic Party right now. If not for people like Chuck Schumer, you would have an entire political party led by people like Tlaib. Thank God for the Jewish people in both parties. Why is the USA the great Satan while Israel is only the little Satan? Until 1948, that's what Iran calls us, the great Satan. Until 1948, Islam has historically treated Christians worse than Jews, pretty much across the board. Why? Two issues. Polytheism. In Islam, there is only one unforgivable sin. It's called shirk. It is to associate others with God. In other words, it's polytheism. It is Christianity. The only unforgivable sin. Judaism is not perceived by Islam as guilty of shirk. That's why, for example, you remember, what was the name of them? Bokra, I think was the name of it, in Nigeria a few years ago, and the way they came against the Christians. They've always treated Christians worse than Jews, except since 1948. Because Islam has a doctrine of once we own land, we can't give it up to anybody. So Islam hates Christianity far more than they hate Judaism. Not only that, Islam was formed around 610 AD. Until 1948, there had never been a Jewish nation during the life of Islam. Therefore, Judaism had never presented a national threat in the eyes of Islam. Since 1948, now they see Judaism as a national threat. There has always been Christian nations during the life of Islam, and therefore Islam perceives Christianity as a larger threat and guilty of the only unforgivable sin. It is estimated by Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary that more than 70 million Christians have been martyred in the last 2 millennia. Let me put this in context for you. You've all heard it said that more people have been killed in the name of religion than anything else. That is a blatant lie. Okay, the Soviet Union killed between 20 and 50 million of its own people. Secular communism killed 20 to 50 million of its own people. Not in the name of religion, in the name of secularism. China killed between 50 and 100 million people. Either one of those numbers is multiple times more than all the people killed by all religious wars in all of human history. It's not even close. It's a blatant lie. Religion has not killed more than anybody else. Religion has been the savior of that kind of thing. It's secularism. The idea that people don't matter, that's the threat. That's the threat. There are people who think that Iran wants nuclear weapons for Israel. I do not believe that at all. Zero possibility of that in my thinking. Iran does not want to irradiate Israel. They want to own the land. They see the United States as being in the way of them owning the land. Iran wants a nuclear 9/11 in the U.S. That's what they want. Because they want to remove the great Satan so that they can just take the little Satan. That's the threat. There's a book called Confronting Islam, written by an Iranian man who said, there are Americans who believe that we let the hostages go because we were afraid of Reagan, so we let them go on Reagan's first day. That's because of silly, American, stupid pride. The reason we let them go was because we knew we had brought the President Carter down. We won. We didn't need the hostages anymore. When you look at things with a wrong perspective, you will always have the wrong answer. Israel will survive any nuclear threat. Why? Because she will exist when Yeshua comes back. But there is no guarantee that the United States will survive. I'm not saying that she won't. I am saying there is no guarantee. And what I am saying, therefore, is this is a classic case of Genesis 12. I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you I will curse. And if the United States does not stand with Israel in this, it will be to our detriment and not hers. We make the mistake if we think that Iran or North Korea, for that matter, needs to develop a delivery system. It does not need to develop a delivery system. It already has a delivery system. Put it in a car, put it in a boat, put it on a small plane. A thermonuclear weapon weighing as little as 600 pounds can deliver a nuclear bomb equivalent to 1.2 megatons, the largest nuclear weapon the U.S. has, in a car. Imagine putting a nuclear bomb in a boat and sailing it up the Potomac River. Imagine putting a nuclear bomb off the coast of Florida. Imagine putting a nuclear bomb off the coast of Los Angeles. And the United States, 3 bombs will never be the same. There is no recovery from that kind of mess. You see the point? It's just, and the real threat to the U.S. is not Russia. Russia never attacked us during the Cold War. Why? Because they know we have a doctrine, mutual assured destruction. You do this to us, and you're toast. The real threat is Iran and North Korea. That's the threat. Does that make sense? That's where we need to be concerned. And they don't need to deliver it. All they need to do is to give it to someone else to deliver it. In a car. Nuclear doomsday clock, page 11. A time of unprecedented danger. It is 90 seconds to midnight. January 2023. Founded in 1945 by Albert Einstein. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists says it is now 90 seconds to midnight. This year, the Science and Security Board of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists moved the hands of the doomsday clock forward, largely, though not exclusively, because of the mounting dangers of the war in Ukraine. The clock now stands at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest to global catastrophe that it has ever been. This page is the reason why I gave you all that other stuff. Next paragraph and highlight. And worst of all, Russia's thinly veiled threats to use nuclear weapons remind the world that escalation of the conflict by accident, intention, or miscalculation is a terrible risk. The possibility that the conflict could spin out of anyone's control remains high. Again, I will just say Russia is not our biggest threat. China is not our biggest threat. China is probably a bigger threat than Russia is in terms of nuclear weapons, because they don't care about people as much as Russia cares about its people. But the real threat is North Korea and Iran. That's the threat. And we're making a mistake if we think dropping a small bomb on some proxy of Iran who's in Syria or who's in Lebanon or who's in Yemen or who's in Jordan or who's in Gaza is going to make any difference at all. Iran is happy to have Hamas die for their cause. The Hamas leaders are happy to have the Palestinians die for their cause. Iran is happy to have that happen. Iran has not been touched. I don't know that we should touch them. I don't know. But I know that short of touching them, no military response will have any impact on Iran at all, because they're happy to have other people die. On page 12, you can see the doomsday clock timeline and how the time is gone. It has never been 90 seconds to midnight in the existence of the clock since the time of the creation of nuclear weapons. We are living in an unprecedented time. Is this relevant for today? Last Best Chance is a movie, a dramatic thriller produced by the Nuclear Threat Initiative about governments around the world racing to attempt to stop a terrorist organization from gaining loose nuclear weapons and the supplies before it's too late. A gripping docudrama starring actor and former Senator Fred Thompson as the President of the United States. At the end, the 45-minute video movie, 45 minutes, has a 15-minute roundtable discussion about the threat of nuclear weapons with Tom Brokaw and Republican Senator Richard Lugar and Democratic Senator Nunn, one from each party. Their concern was, at that time, half of the nuclear material from the collapse of the Soviet Union was still not accounted for. 2005. It fell in '89. So the movie is concerned because in the movie, before anything was politically correct the way it is now, the concern was there was a radical Muslim movement trying to get a hold of nuclear material to bring a nuclear device into the U.S. And the movie ends with, you can just watch it, it's 45 minutes. And you have to type it in exactly like you have it in the thing to get to it. But that link is, we loaded it into Box so you could actually watch it. You can't find it online to watch. But you'll see those two senators, and you'll see Tom Brokaw, and you'll see the discussion. And the movie ends with a nuclear device it's in a car, and it's being driven across the border from Canada. And that's how the movie ends. The open borders really matter. I mean, that is just dumb. Dumb, okay? What do I know about nuclear weapons? A lot more than I can take the time to tell you. I did 4 years as a launch control officer in the Air Force, which means that if we'd ever launched the intercontinental ballistic missiles, I would have been the one to insert the keys and launch them. One of those 4 years, I wrote the training manuals for the other launch control officers. Then a 5th year, I ran the simulator for them. When I left the squadron, as I was leaving, I was on alert when the first President Bush gave the order, because we had won the Cold War, to bring the Minuteman II, half of the Minuteman II missiles off of alert. So I was on order. I was on post when that order was given. It was under my command. Okay, so when I left, I was the only officer in the wing who has 5 outstanding performance evaluations. There was only one who had 4. He was my deputy. So I literally have more outstanding performance evaluations as a launch control officer than anyone else in the wing in history. 265 times I went underground, 50 to 100 feet below ground, and stood watch over 100 to 150, well, 150, not 100, 150 ICBMs. Page 14. The reason why I gave you the top 2 pictures on page 13 is because this is all unclassified, is because this comes from that document. This is unclassified. And I'll read it to you and explain it. I'm going to run out of time for the most important part, which is the Bible part. We are the backbone of deterrence, yet overall our understanding of nuclear weapons is somewhat lacking. This is written to people like me when I was a new launch control officer. The purpose of this section is to familiarize you with the capabilities of your weapons. By becoming more familiar with the power of your fingertips, you may gain an understanding of how important your role is in the strategic defense of our country. Nuclear weapons have several, there'll be 4 of them, detonation options. Air burst, surface burst, high altitude burst, and subsurface burst are the basic options with variations available for each type of burst. The air burst is definable as one occurring below 100,000 feet, yet one in which the fireball does not touch the ground. So it's up high, but it's not as high as the kind of bomb that you would use if you wanted to create an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, which would have no effect on the Earth at all, but it would knock out an EMP. If you explode a nuclear bomb high enough, it will knock out all electronic devices within 3,000 miles. Your water tower will never work again. Your car, your watch, your phone, nothing. Not fixable, never. One bomb, somewhere halfway over Canada, and with the exception of the end of Florida and California, nothing will work. It takes, you can look it up online, I'm not telling you anything classified. How long does it take for a nuclear bomb to go from the Soviet Union to the US to hit its target? I'm not talking about over Canada, I'm talking to hit its target. About 30 minutes. A lot less than that if you're going to explode it over Canada. Okay, this is the world we live in. Okay, so airburst on page 14 in the middle of that is defined as one occurring below 100,000 feet, yet one in which the fireball does not touch the ground. In a 1 megaton blast, I worked with 1.2 megatons, the fireball is 1.1 miles across. The overpressure in the first 11 seconds will inflict severe damage on most structures within a 7-mile area under the blast. This, coupled with 180-mile-per-hour winds, will totally destroy most soft targets within a 10-mile area. After a minute, the rising fireball begins sucking air back into itself as it rises. 200-mile-an-hour winds occur now faster, going in the opposite direction toward the fireball. The mushroom cloud rises at 250 miles an hour, and after 2 minutes, it's 7 miles high. After the initial heat and blast destroy most everything within 5 miles of ground zero, radioactive fallout occurs in the form of raindrops, dust particles, and debris from the huge cloud. This is worse than the initial blast in that it contaminates the area for years. Imagine if instead the bomb were on a boat off the West Coast and the winds would take it across America. The high-altitude bursts have a huge, brilliant fireball that can be seen for 700 miles. The physical effects are mostly dissipated by the time they reach the Earth. However, the electromagnetic pulse can degrade electronic equipment for an area of 3,000 miles. A surface airburst is one in which a portion of the fireball in the early stages of the blast does touch the ground. A crater is created partly from the vaporization of the soil and partly from the upward suction of the blast. A 1 megaton bomb makes a crater 1,000 feet wide, 225 feet deep. The surface burst tends to over-destroy an area. It is not as efficient as the air burst in damage capabilities overall. However, it would be preferable for hardened targets such as launch control centers, where assured destruction is desired. The subsurface burst is defined as one in which the center of the fireball is below the surface, so it hits the ground, digs, and explodes. It creates a moderate earthquake and seriously contaminates downward areas because dust particles carry the radiation more easily. A 1 megaton bomb used as a subsurface option will throw 10 million tons of soil and rock into the air. We have these options to wage mass nuclear war on our enemies. Of course, they have the same option to wage mass nuclear war on us. A MIRV, multiple reentry vehicle, a MIRV-equipped SS-18, that's Russian. That's the Russian, they still have these. That's the ones I described as the 10 missiles, 10 explosive devices. A MIRV SS-18 can deliver a 5 megaton RV on target. Obviously, we saw that this is an old, this page is older. The other documentation I showed you is 10, and they're much larger than 5. Okay, 5 megaton bomb on target, creating a crater 3,000 feet wide, 700 feet deep. The same bomb creates wind speeds of 3,500 miles. A tornado has wind speeds of 250 miles. Fireball of 2.8 miles across will form within seconds. Within the fireball, temperatures will reach 14,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Iron melts at 2795. So, is it a real concern? Should we be aware of it? I do know something about these. Nuclear weapons in the Bible. My interest in them first started when I was in high school or junior high. I don't remember exactly, but I remember the moment when I was reading an article in the Bergen Record, the newspaper, and I believe the name of the article was "Scientists Baffled by Lying in the Book of Daniel," but I wrote Bible, not Daniel, because it's actually in the book of Zechariah, not the book of Daniel. Okay? And it describes the exact effects of a neutron bomb. A neutron bomb is a nuclear bomb which is very clean, meaning it leaves no residual radiation. It puts out a lot of radiation and does not destroy the buildings. And so it's just a massive amount, but it doesn't have the residuals, which is everything's just dead, and the buildings are left. Zechariah 14, and this shall be the plague with which the Lord shall strike all the people who fought against Jerusalem. The flesh will dissolve while they stand on their feet. And I remember the article saying scientists were baffled because this is exactly what a neutron bomb will do. Their eyes will dissolve in their sockets, their tongues dissolve in their mouths. It shall come to pass in the day that a great panic from the Lord will be among them. Everyone will seize the hand of his neighbor, and his right hand against his neighbor's hand. Judah will fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of the nations surrounding shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. Such shall be the plague of the horse and the mule, the camel, the donkey, and all the cattle will be in their camps. So shall their plague be. Now, I know I talk about this, and like my wife once said to me, she said, yeah, but how do you know they're really going to get used? You can get ready with that video pretty soon, thanks. So how do you know they're really going to get used? Revelation 19 says directly that when the Lord comes back, if you'll notice on page 16, and at the end of that passage it says, and I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, and the armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse. So when the Lord returns to the earth, humanity is going to make war against Yeshua. What are they going to use? A .38 revolver? No. So it's pretty evident. And we have no weapons that humanity has not at some point used. That doesn't exist. So it's pretty evident that they're going to be used. I want to show you a short video from a film I show. I use it often. The whole thing is not about eschatology. Well, the whole thing is about eschatology, but it's not about like war. But there's one little clip in it I want you to see. It's 2 minutes long.
Weapons of mass destruction. Now, while that term doesn't exist in the Hebrew Bible, it's pretty clear from the images described by the prophets that's definitely what they had in mind. If we look at the prophet Zechariah again, from 2,500 years ago, he says, and there shall be a day that is known to God, which shall be neither day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at the evening time there shall be a light. And this will be the plague with which the Lord will strike all the nations that have gathered against Jerusalem. Their flesh will be consumed while they stand upon their feet. And their eyes will be consumed in their sockets, and their tongues will be consumed in their mouths. And what does that sound like? Certainly some kind of weapon of mass destruction. People love it. The prophet Yoel, also from thousands of years ago, writes, and I will show my wonders in heaven and on earth, blood and fire and Timroth Ashan. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon to blood at the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. It's a very creepy prophecy. And I deliberately didn't translate those words, Timroth Ashan, because they require a little explanation. Here's the phrase in Hebrew. Ashan ayin shin nun, so in Hebrew means smoke or cloud. Smoke. Timroth, every Hebrew word has a three-letter root. The root of Timroth is Taf Mem Resh in Hebrew, which is Tamal. Tamal, we know, is a date palm. And it's being used as an adjective here. Blood, fire, and date palms of smoke. So what's a date palm of smoke?
Okay, so on page 16, if we get some lights, thanks. There's the Joel 2 passage that he just gave us. If you'll notice, it's also quoted by Peter in Acts. In Acts, it's blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The word for vapor, this is bad theology. When you say the English word that's bad theology, but still sometimes it's really interesting, you know. The word for vapor is the word atmos, from which we get our English word atoms. Atoms of smoke. That's how the New Testament quotes it. And how does the Old Testament say it? Pillars of date palm-shaped smoke pillars. Now, maybe you think that's not the Lord, or not nuclear weapons, but it sure looks like it to me. He's not messianic. He sees it. Okay, it's pretty evident. We go over to page 17. I believe this. There are a lot of verses that describe the day of the Lord. I'm not going to go through them all, but let me just say this. If you believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, the day of the Lord's after that. If you believe in a mid-tribulation rapture, the day of the Lord is after that. If you believe in a pre-wrath rapture, the day of the Lord is after that. If you believe in a post-trib rapture, it's like right at the end of that. I don't know what to do with the timing of the rapture. I used to be strongly pre-trib. I don't know what to do with it. Okay? That's the honest truth. But I'm going to skip talking about them a lot just to go down on page 17, Luke 21:28. This verse really caught me when I was a brand new Christian, like 1982. I heard a sermon that the preacher used that verse there. He says, now when these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads because your redemption draws near. And I heard that sermon, and it injected something in me. And I can honestly say that I have never, not one day in my life, been afraid of end times theology. Why? Because whatever you tell me simply says, Yeshua's return is soon. There's nothing about it that scares me. Why am I going to be afraid when he's coming? That's like the greatest thing possible, right? I'm not finding my comfort in things on the planet. I'm finding my comfort in him. So it doesn't scare me to hear this kind of stuff. It actually makes me kind of maybe sickly. You know, he's coming. Okay. All right. So notice on page 17 near the bottom, Joel 2, the sun will be turned to darkness. Going over to page 18, the day of the Lord is the end. Now it doesn't, by the way, just because all that's after, does not mean you could not have nuclear weapons before. So how we pray and what we do with it really matters. You see the point? It matters. Just because they're going to be at Armageddon does not mean they will not be before. So this matters. Okay? So darkness, could this possibly be what they refer to as a nuclear winter? That is, a nuclear exchange puts so much soot up in the air that the sky turns dark and the world enters a nuclear winter. Mark 13, in those days after I got so much I could say, but you have all this. Right? After the tribulation, the sun will be turned to dark, the moon will not give its light, the stars of heaven will fall, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds, from the farthest parts, from the farthest part of the earth to the farthest parts of heaven. Coincidentally, and not theologically significant, the Greek word for powers is the word dunamis, from which we get our English word dynamite. And the word for power, again, not theologically significant, but certainly interesting, is the word, the word for heavens, rather, is the word Uranus, which is the word we get our English word uranium from. So, you could, not theologically significant, but certainly of interest, you could read that as the dunamis of the uranium will shake, the dynamite of the uranium. What is significant is that what the word actually means. So the word shaken actually is a word that refers to motion produced by winds and storms. Now that is significant. Page 19, I'm going fast, but you have this, you can look at it later. Page 19, Revelation 6, I looked when he opened the sixth seal. The Lord himself was opening these seals. And behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of the heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it's shaken by a mighty wind. Okay, well, we got this picture here in Mark 13 and also in Revelation 6, verse 13, of stars falling from the heaven. Consider how an intercontinental ballistic missile travels around the globe. It takes off from a launch platform. It travels high into the upper atmosphere. The re-entry vehicle, the RV, falls from the sky as a star does and does its destruction. Do Mark 13:25 and Revelation 6:13 describe the wind of a nuclear explosion? The fastest tornadoes ever clocked are F5 tornadoes with wind speeds of 261 to 318 miles an hour. A Russian SS-18 5-megaton bomb will produce winds of 3,500 miles an hour. Since the targeting systems have improved so much, I alluded to this point earlier, but I'll make it here. I didn't make it, I'll make it here. Since targeting systems of nukes have improved so much, many countries are now making our nuclear weapons smaller. We can hit the door on the other side of the planet with a nuclear weapon. The weapon does not have to be as big. You can hit the door. Right? It's kind of obvious, and that's why they're getting smaller. However, there still are big ones. NORAD is the North American Aerospace Defense Command. It's a military command and control center facility that is dug actually inside, well inside a mountain. I have been in NORAD. It was built to survive a nuclear attack. I remember the man who gave me the briefing said that at the time, and they still have weapons now that are plenty large enough to do this, okay, that the nuclear weapons have gotten so big and so much more powerful that where the mountain is now, there would be a hole. The mountain can be removed, which is very interesting if you consider Revelation 6:15 and the kings of the earth and the rich men and the commanders. So we're not talking about leaders of the planet. The mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains. That's NORAD. If you ever get to NORAD, you could get caught in an exercise, and if you do, the siren will go off, great steel doors will close, the mountain is locked up. It's something like the sounding of a trumpet as a warning, going to page 20. Remember Joel 2:30, and I will show wonders in the heavens and the earth, and blood and fire and pillars of smoke. Well, that chapter opens with these words. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. It is at hand. The book of Revelation has several trumpet warnings. We're right near the end. I'm going to get it in. The first trumpet warning, Revelation 8:7. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. The word for earth is gay. It means land. So they're thrown to the land. A third of the trees are burned up. So the first trumpet warning destroys a third of the land. Okay, and notice that fire and blood are mingled and thrown to the earth. What about the hail? Well, in the early nuclear days of our country, we were testing the early hydrogen bombs, and so we did that at a place called Eniwetok Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. We surrounded the atoll with a bunch of evacuated, decommissioned naval vessels, and they found that when the hydrogen bomb detonated, there was tremendous pressure which forced water from the ocean as well as from the atmosphere to condense, and when the water fell from the sky as huge pieces of ice, it actually damaged the iron vessels. Hail and fire mingled with blood. The second trumpet, Revelation 8. Then the second angel said, I mean, how would you, if you were a first century person having a vision, how would you describe this stuff? You see the point? How would you describe it? I mean, this is exactly how you would describe what Joel said, what Zechariah said, what John in Revelation. It's exactly how you would describe it. How else would you describe it? In Revelation 8, the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. Not the land, the sea. And a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died. A third of the ships were destroyed. Something like a huge mountain causes this catastrophe. So, suppose the nuclear arsenals of the world began to throw nukes at each other. Basically, nukes can be delivered in three ways. It could be by land, by sea, and by air. The three ways you could deliver the triad, okay? It is commonly thought that when a nation collects a lot of nuclear submarines, they are preparing for a first strike capability. The subs can get very close to the enemy and launch, not giving much time to respond. How much time would the U.S. have to respond if a sub were off the coast of Florida and off the coast of New York? It takes 30 minutes from Moscow, not from there. You see the point? You don't have 5 minutes. Okay, so it's commonly thought that submarines provide that first strike capability. Page 21. However, an aggressor might not want to use its subs early in the attack. Why? If a nation launches its nukes, its victim will respond by attacking whatever nukes they can target. They will respond. That's called mutual assured destruction. Russia, you nuke us, we're nuking you. Don't do it, because as Reagan and Gorbachev said, a nuclear war cannot be won, and therefore should never be fought. They agreed on that. Russia's not our problem. China's probably not our problem. It's Iran and North Korea that are our problem. There's our risk. Okay? So obviously, the easiest nukes to target for destruction are land-based ICBMs. They're in a hole in the ground. They're not going anywhere until they're launched. Therefore, if you want to use those nukes in a war, use them first. Because once you use those subs, those ICBMs are now targeted. They're gone in 30 minutes. Don't launch the subs and think you're going to have those ICBMs in 35 minutes, because you're not. Launch the ICBMs now, you'll have the subs in 35 minutes, because they're hiding. You see the point? Isn't it interesting, the order? You go from land-based attack to a sea-based attack. It just fits. Okay, then a third of the ships are destroyed, according to Revelation 8:9. Why? It doesn't. If it were a meteor, it wouldn't destroy a third of the ships. If a meteor dropped in the Atlantic Ocean, that's not going to kill a third of the ships. It'll kill all the ships in the Atlantic Ocean area. But if you start targeting submarines where ships are, now you're going to be easily killing a third of the ships. Do you see that? This really does fit that model, or that illustration. The third trumpet judgment, Revelation 8, verses 10 and 11. The third angel sounded. A great star fell from heaven, something like a burning torch. It fell into a third of the rivers, in other words, fresh water now, and on the springs of the water. So the first one was land. The second one was the sea, salt water. Now we're on the fresh water. The name of the star is Wormwood. The third of the waters became wormwood, and men died from the water because it was made bitter. Okay? Again, now what is something like a torch? It says, well, what's a torch? A torch is something that is used to set something else on fire. Stars falling from the sky. I do think this next paragraph is interesting. In Revelation 8:11, the particular trumpet or torch is called wormwood, which is a bitter-tasting plant. Jack Van Impe said that in the Ukrainian Bible, it's translated the word wormwood with the word Chernobyl. So you all know Dr. Vladimir Pickman. I asked him this week. Okay, he is Ukrainian. He said the word wormwood is Chernobyl. Many of you will know Valentin Savantek. He's also Ukrainian. I asked him this week. Imagine, and he said, same thing. Imagine a blazing torch now called Chernobyl falling from the sky. Remember how nukes travel around the globe. They take off from their launch platform. They travel high above the upper atmosphere. The re-entry vehicle called the RV then falls from the sky as a burning torch, lighting it up. In the case of Revelation 8:11, the great star, or wormwood, pollutes the water and people die. It is possible that the first two trumpets are nuclear exchanges, land and sea, and the third trumpet is the ecological fallout as the effects of the first two trumpets destroy our planet's water system. Page 22, the fourth trumpet, Revelation 8:12. Fourth angel sounded. A third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, a third of them were darkened, a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. So the fourth angel sounds its trumpet, a third of the luminaries goes out. This sounds like possibly a nuclear winter, nuclear darkness, following the land, the sea, the fresh water, and now the luminaries are no longer shining. The sixth trumpet, Revelation 9. Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates. And Euphrates is east of Jerusalem, just to help you with this. So the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and the day and the month and the year were released to kill a third of mankind. The number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. And I heard the number of them. Thus I saw the horses of the vision who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, jacinth blue, and sulfur yellow, and the heads of the horses were like heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these three plagues a third of mankind was killed, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone, which came out of their mouths, for their power is in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents, having heads with which to do harm. The sixth trumpet then consists of an army of 200 million horsemen, according to verse 16. They come from the east, Euphrates, which is where the Euphrates is. China is east of the Euphrates. As far back as 1965, China announced it could outfit an army of 200 million. Of course, at the time that John wrote Revelation, soldiers on horses were the strength of an army. How else would a person have described this 2,000 years ago? Okay, how is this army described? They have breastplates. Breastplates is a word that conveys military. This military army is fiery red, dark blue, and yellow like sulfur. The army is described as horsemen. So the horses are the animals that are ridden into the battle. The heads of the warrior horses resemble the heads of lions, and out of their mouths come fire, smoke, and brimstone. Revelation chapter 9, 17 and 18 actually says that an army from the east will have breastplates or weapons with which it will fight, and the weapons it fights with are fire and brimstone, and these weapons will produce a lot of smoke. According to Revelation 9:15, the sixth trumpet kills a third of mankind. With today's population of 8 billion, I heard just about a week ago they now say we're at 8 billion people. That would be 2 2/3 billion people would be killed in moments. And it's by weapons. Is there any weapon that could do that? It's kind of obvious there's only one kind of weapon that could do that. Since Revelation 9 is talking about an army of 200 million troops armed with breastplates and riding war horses, I ask, are there any weapons which are capable of killing over 2 billion people, which could be described as fire and brimstone? And, of course, according to Revelation 9:17, those weapons must be weapons that produce a lot of smoke. So I think it is reasonable to say that, yes, it looks like the Bible describes nuclear weapons in the last days. Wow. I don't think it's I don't have any doubt about it. And that doesn't mean it has to happen in our life. Doesn't mean that at all. Do I live in fear of it? No. But do I think it's a likely part of the world to come? I do. Do I think we should be praying? Absolutely. Again, I don't think Russia's the real threat. I just don't. It's a threat, but it's not the real threat. China's a bigger threat, but it's not the ultimate threat. It's the lunatic terrorists who are the threat. It's not an October 7th mess. That's not the threat. It's a nuclear 9/11. That's the threat. That's very different. So let me pray, and then who's going to come? You have the privilege of doing this, huh? But let me pray. Lord, we pray for the leaders of our country, Lord, President Biden, Chuck Schumer, Mike Johnson, the leaders of our country, Lord, that they, Lord, will make good decisions, Lord, that will result in giving us safety. We pray for them that we might live quiet and peaceful lives. You told us to do this. You also said, you have not because you ask not. Therefore, we ask. We ask, Lord, that you will keep us safe, that you will keep our families safe, that, Lord, you will help us to live sober lives, Lord, awake and not to live like clowns, Lord, ignoring the reality, but yes, to enjoy the life that you give us, but to not be fools either. Because, Lord, we know you're coming. And we want you to come. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. We're not afraid of your return. We want your return. We desire your return, and we want to live with you forever. We also pray, Lord, for Benjamin Netanyahu, Lord, that you will give him the wisdom to know what he should do, when he should do it, Lord, to do all that he should and not a drop more. in the name that is above every name. We pray for Putin, Lord, to make good decisions, Lord, because things are really on the edge, Lord. We pray for Xi, Lord, of China to make good decisions, Lord, and that no one will make the kind of mistake that could be made, Lord. We pray for our safety in the name that is above every name, in Yeshua's name. Amen.